Hey there, curious minds. Welcome aboard the Eloquent Explorers, your passport to the fun side of English, where every word has a story and every sentence is an adventure. Today, we're diving into Lost Spring by Anees Jung, a powerful tale of stolen childhoods, broken dreams, and the burning hope that refuses to die. Let's explore the world of Saheb and Mukesh and uncover what spring really means when it's lost too soon. This one's a must watch for grade 12 CBSE students and PGT English aspirants preparing for exams such as KVS, AWES, etc. We'll break it down with key themes like poverty, child labor, and resilience, symbolic analysis, exam specific vocabulary, etc. Let's turn this chapter into your scoring opportunity. So stay till the end and watch the video to get a thorough understanding of the chapter. Through this video, we are going to cover a detailed explanation of this chapter along with its literary aspects such as themes, tone, mood, style, literary devices, main characters, the message that the story gives. We will also take a quick recap and know about the author, the setting, and the introduction. So this video is going to be a complete package for everyone who is interested and who desires to learn something from this chapter. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let us first talk about our author Anees Jung. She is an Indian author, journalist, and columnist. The era she belongs to is the contemporary post-independence Indian literature, that is the era after independence. She's known for highlighting social injustice, especially in women and children, especially against women and children. Her famous works include Unveiling India, Night of the New Moon. She is associated with realism and journalistic narrative style. She's not a Nobel laureate but is recognized for social commentary in Indian English literature. That is about our author. Now let's move further. Now this chapter has been divided into two parts. Therefore, we have two different settings. One is Seemapuri, which is a slum on the outskirts of Delhi, a home to rag pickers. Rag pickers are people who pick out garbage and then they sell it forward to earn money. Okay. The second setting is in Firozabad, which is in Uttar Pradesh, which is famous for bangle making industry. Now the time for both the stories is the same, that being the post-independence India, which was witness to socio-economic issues because British had just left and they had left India in a very poor condition. Alright, and that this aftermath of colonization, of wars, and so many things that had happened in the past more than 100 years was now being seen in people undergoing poverty, in people trying to survive in the difficult situations that were there. Hence the time period you can understand as the post independence India, which was witnessing the socio-economic issues. All right, now let me give you a quick introduction to the story. This chapter has been divided into two parts. The first one is the story of Saheb, who is a rag picker who belongs to a family of rag pickers, and he along with his friends have a conversation with our author, that is Anees Jung, and through that conversation we get to know about how they survive, how they live their lives, and how through collecting garbage and through collecting things that could be of value in the garbage, they earn their meals. These people live in the slums outside of on the outskirts of Delhi, which is not that far away from Delhi. However, they are so far away from the people that nobody recognizes their plight, nobody recognizes their pains and the situations that they have to go through, the troubles that they have to go through, just in order to earn one meal a day, at least a meal a day. All right. And then the second story is of Mukesh. He is from a family of bangle makers. Again, people living in poverty in Firozabad, which is famous for bangle making, and yet these people cannot earn well. And just for mere bangles, for some bangles, they have to lose their health, their eyesight, because they have to work for very long hours with hot furnaces and glass. So, this is another conversation with our author Anees Jung, and through that conversation, we get to know how Mukesh, what are the dreams of children like Mukesh and Saheb. Saheb, who wants to go to school, and Mukesh, who wants to drive a car. Okay, and but how the perpetual poverty, how this never ending poverty of theirs has forced them to continue the profession, or to continue what their elders have been doing. They are so stuck in this vicious cycle of poverty that they cannot come out of it. So, through these two stories, we are going to understand the state our country was in, and the state our poor people are in, even in today's time, that they cannot even dare to dream, because then that would mean going against their families and against their values, and they do not have that authority, those resources to do so. All right, now let's begin by understanding the story through the story itself. The first part is, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Why do you do this? I asked Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Now, this I is our author. Okay, this is Anees Jung. All right, she is Anees. All right, now she encounters Sahib. She sees Sahib every day looking for something in the garbage, looking for gold. For them, for these rag pickers, anything valuable in the garbage dumps is gold. Okay. Sahib left his home long ago. Set amidst the green fields of Dhaka, his home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him. That's why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. If I start a school, will you come? I ask half jokingly. Now, this story begins by describing that the family of Sahib had come very long ago from Dhaka, because they had encountered uh, lot of storms which had swept away the fields that they were there, that the green fields that among which these people used to live, they were all swept away by those storms, and their homes were all destroyed. So they had no other chance, but they no other option but to come to this big city of Delhi and start looking for gold, start looking for ways to earn money. The only thing they could do was, because they're not from India, and so all they could do was to start picking rags, to start picking garbage. Okay, so when Anis asks Sahib that why does he keep looking in the garbage, he tells her that he had nothing to do. What else could he do? Being so poor, being so caught up in poverty, with his parents left with nothing, their homes destroyed, their fields destroyed, they did not have anything. So he had nothing else to do. So that all he could do was to pick the garbage, to you can say to search the garbage for something valuable, and then sell it for money, and or procure food from it. To which to which our author replies, advises him to go to school. But then she uh, realizes that this advice is so hollow. People who cannot even earn a fair square meal, how can their children go to school? children who have been forced by poverty, by the circumstances, to look for valuable items in the garbage. How can one expect them to go to school? So now this Sahib responds to her that there is no school, and if they build one for them, he will definitely go. He wants to go to school, but there isn't an opportunity for him. So here, the point to be noted is that one gold in garbage is something valuable that they can sell, that has a resale value. And school here is the symbol for, you can say, a key to come out of poverty. Okay, and him not being able to go to school, or there being no school for such children, shows that they are so poor, that they are so caught up in poverty, in their situations, in their troubles, that they cannot go to school even if they want to. So now, Anees Jung half jokingly asks whether he would go to a school if she opened one. He was interested in going to school. Yes, he says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not met. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. Now, when she asks if he would go to school, if the author built one, he actually agrees, because he does want to go to school. He does want to come out of his vicious cycle of poverty. He does want to learn something and change his life. But, and then when he comes running towards the author, asking, believing that she would have a school ready for him, and which makes our author realize that she made a hollow promise. She made a false promise to him. And not only her, there have been people like politicians, like rich people, like businessmen, who have made promises to these people that were never fulfilled, that were never kept. And hence, their sad world, their bleak world, remained as it was. Because there were promises like hers in every corner of their world which were never fulfilled. They were never kept. After months of knowing him, I ask him his name. Sahib Alam, he announces. He does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the universe, he would have a hard time believing it. Here you can see the irony. Okay, the name Sahib Alam actually means Lord of the universe. But look at his condition. So his name is an irony to his condition, and he does not know the meaning. But if he did, he would not believe that that the meaning of his name is something so great. Yet what he has to do is something so sad, so something that he's not deserving of. He deserves a better life. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. Now, he did not know what his name meant, and even if he did, he wouldn't believe it. Okay? What he does is that he roams the streets with his friends. They are all an army of barefoot boys, and they come in the morning, and by noon they disappear. Over the months, our author has come to recognize each of them. She now knows them by name, and she actually at least knows their faces and who is whom. Alright? Why aren't you wearing chappals? I ask one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. Okay, now there is this another boy other than Sahib in his group. There is another boy whom she asks why he's not wearing chappals, slippers. So, to which he answers very simply that his mother does not bring them down from the shelter, his mother does not give it to them. To which the other boy replies that, adds the information that even if she did give him the slippers, he would throw them off. So, simply put, he does not like to wear slippers. Okay, he loves to stay barefoot. And this comment was added by another boy, another child, wearing shoes that weren't matching. Now, when he comments on it, our author comments on it, telling him that his shoes do not match, he shuffles his feet. He's a little embarrassed. He moves his feet front and back, and which shows his nervousness and his embarrassment, and does not respond to her. I want shoes, says a third boy, who has never owned a pair in his life. There's another boy, the third boy, who was added to the conversation, expressing his desire to expressing his desire for shoes. This child has never owned a pair of shoes in his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money but a tradition to stay barefoot, is one explanation. So, here now, I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. Now, our author has traveled across the country, and she has seen a lot of children. We also have seen a lot of children. The children who we see in India, if we see, you can say, near the red light, near the traffic lights, and if we see them on the streets, we see a lot of poor children, a lot of beggars barefoot, okay, in cities and on village roads. But here, one explanation is given that it is not the lack of money. It's not that they do not have money. It's just that it's a tradition that they follow to stay barefoot, which our author wonders is probably just an explanation, just an excuse to let them stay in their perpetual state of poverty, in their never-ending state of poverty. And that's what she understands. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived, panting, and threw his bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remained shoeless. Now she remembers a story from this children running barefoot. She remembers a story from about a man from Udupi who once told her that as a young boy, whenever he would go to school, he would pass an old temple where his father was a priest. Where his father was a priest. There he would stop for a small moment, for a short moment. There he would stop at the temple and then pray for shoes. Now 30 years have passed, and she visited Udupi again, and she also saw that temple. Okay, now that temple was drowned in an air of desolation, which means that temple was almost in ruins. It was almost it was almost destroyed. Okay, it was all lonely and destroyed, but in the backyard there lived a priest. Now over there she saw that there were red and white plastic chairs, and there was a young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, who came panting and who must have come running from school and just threw his school bag on a folding bed. Now, looking at that boy, she remembers a prayer that the other boy had made to the goddess. When this boy who had prayed to get shoes, when he had finally got his shoes, he had prayed to the goddess to never let him lose them. So this is actually a comparison that the family of the boy who told her the story was so poor. Being priests also, they were so poor that they could not afford shoes. But now, after 30 years, the times have changed, and even though the temple is in such a bad shape, it's almost ruined, it's almost destroyed, the priest of that temple has earned enough to um, to provide his child with education and with shoes. So this has shown that priests have done well. Their situation has improved. They can now spend money on education and clothes and shoes. But the situation of the rag pickers, the situations of these boys in her neighborhood that she was talking to, is still, over so many months and years, is still the same, that they cannot even afford a simple pair of shoes. All right. So this portion shows us a contrast, that how priests and other people have evolved, have improved financially, but rag pickers and people in slums still remain the same. They still remain in their perpetual state of poverty. They still remain in their never ending state of poverty. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Seemapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it, metaphorically. Periphery is just the boundary. Okay, so this is, let's say, Delhi, and this boundary is your periphery. All right. Now she says that Seemapuri is a place on the boundaries of Delhi, but metaphorically it is very far away from it, very miles away from it, because Delhi is evolving. Delhi is people in Delhi are becoming richer. Their financial situation is improving. They are earning money. They're earning their livelihoods and they are earning fair square meals. Okay, a lot of people have become rich as well, but these people living so close to these people are still far away from that financial growth, from that stable economic situation. They are still so poor. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Saheb's family is among them. So they came from Dhaka, if you remember, and from the introduction, from the first paragraph of the story. They came from Dhaka because their fields were destroyed and their homes were destroyed. So they were squatters. Squatters are people who are living in an area which without anybody's permission. Okay, they found an area, they found a building, or they found some empty space, and they are just living there, and they don't own it legally. Okay, they do not have permission from the owner. They're just there, they're living there. All right. Seemapuri was then a wilderness. Wilderness is a place which was left, which was unkempt, which was left by people and ignored by people. So there are a lot of trees and plants and wild shrubs and all, they grow, wild plants they grow. And so it was, you can say, a land that was forgotten, which was now occupied by the people who had come from Bangladesh, the squatters who had come from Bangladesh. They did not own that land legally. Okay, it still is, but it is no longer empty. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water, live 10,000 rag pickers. Now, this place is still a wilderness, is still a place that is still ignored by people living in Delhi, but it is no longer empty. It is now occupied by 10,000 rag pickers who have created their houses of mud structures with roofs of tin and tarpaulin. Okay, so they have made the kacha houses. It is devoid of sewage. It does not have any proper sewage. It does not have any drainage, and there is no running water. So you can picturize slums. They have no facilities. They are just living there in their kacha houses. Their houses made of mud and tin and tarpaulin and whatever they could get to create a structure, to create a roof over their head. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voters list and enable them to buy grain. Food is more important for survival than an identity. Now here they are living here without any permission, but and they do not have any identity. They do not have any, for like now we have Aadhaar cards. They don't have anything like that. They don't have any identity like PAN cards or maybe anything else to their name. Okay, but they do have their ration cards from which they can one buy their food from the ration shops, and second, their name gets on the voters list, so they can vote, but they don't have an identity. Nobody knows who they are. So to these people, food is more important for survival than any kind of identity. They do not want to be recognized. All they want is to be fed. Alright. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered saris when I asked them why they left the beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. And survival in Seemapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportion of a fine art. Garbage is gold. Garbage to them is gold. It is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. Now, when she talks to some women from this family of Sahebs and other people, family of Saheb and other people living in Seemapuri, she asks them as to why they left their fields, they left their beautiful land and came here to live in such a sorry state, in such a poor state. To which these women who were in tattered, who were in torn saris, who were in saris that were very old and had worn out because of usage, when she asks these women, all they tell her is that if at the end of the day they can give their family food and they can go to bed without an aching stomach, they're happy to live in this situation. They're happy to survive here. And survival here in this place in Seemapuri actually means rag picking. They have lived here for 30 years picking garbage and selling whatever they can find valuable from the garbage, and they have been doing it for so long that they're now satisfied with it. So long as it provides them with food to eat before going to bed, they are okay in this situation. They do not want to leave from here, and for them garbage has turned into something gold. It is their daily bread. It is something that gives them food every day. It is something that provides roof over their heads, even if it is a leaky one. Even if it drips water, they are fine with it. But for a child, it is more than gold. It is more than a daily bread. It is more than a leaky roof. It is more than something that provides a roof. Children don't know about all these things. Children are not worried about future, about money, about saving. For them, this is something different. It is a different kind of play for them. It is what they have seen throughout their lives, and it is what they have learned throughout their lives. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note, Saheb says, his eyes lighting up. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For children, it is wrapped in wonder. For elders, it is a means of survival. Now, when she again talks to Saheb, he tells her that sometimes he can find a rupee and sometimes even a 10 rupee note. So, at that time, during those times when we were just coming out of the state of when we were in our post independence state, and we was coming out of the state of this social economic issues, and at that time money, even small amounts like 10 rupees, 50 rupees, 5 rupees, 1 rupee, were they had a lot of value, they were valuable. And specifically for children, for people who could not earn anything at all, a rupee or even a 10 rupee note was something of a very high value. So to this, when Sahib very excitedly tells her that sometimes he can find a rupee and sometimes he can even find a 10 rupee note. So if you find something like this, now imagine one day you're looking through garbage and you find, let's say, 1,000 or a 2,000 rupee note. May not have a lot of value for a lot of us, but for people who have a hard time earning money, for them it is of a great value. And now if they find it once, they're going to want to do this thing, try to look for garbage over and over again, look into this garbage dump over and over again in the hope of finding some more money. So it is the same for these people. If they find money once, they're not going to stop. They will have that hope that they can find more. So this is what our author tells us, that if you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you're not going to stop searching the garbage, because you will hope that there is going to be more. Now it was a 2,000 rupee note, maybe next time it's a gold coin or a silver coin, or maybe it's a earring, because sometimes those things happen. Okay, and you're not going to stop hoping. You may not find anything for most of the days, but in the hope of maybe one day, you're not going to stop looking. So for these children, it seems that it's kind of an adventure for them, that what they will find that the next day or maybe that day. Okay, however, for their parents, it's just a means of survival. So scrounging and searching in the garbage has a totally different meaning for children as compared to what it means for their parents, for the elders. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. I can go inside when no one is around, he admits. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Now here we now get to know that Sahib is interested in learning tennis. He enjoys watching people tennis and he likes the game. He also tells our author that when there's nobody around, this little boy is allowed to use the swing. The gatekeeper over there lets him use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me, he says in a manner of explanation. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in them does not bother him. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. Now, during this conversation, our author looks at his attire, looks at the clothes that he's wearing, which is a discolored shirt and shorts. And then she notices that he's also wearing tennis shoes. When he notices that the author is looking at his shoes, he explains to her that somebody gave them to him. They were discarded shoes of some rich boy who did not want to wear those shoes, because now that those shoes had one of those shoes had a hole in it. Okay, but that thing, that these were discarded shoes and that somebody had thrown them away, and he was wearing something that was uh, discarded by somebody else does not bother him, does not trouble him, because he had never worn shoes, he had never worn any slippers, he had walked barefoot. So, this, even these shoes with a hole in them, it was a dream come true for him. It was something very valuable for him. But the game that he was watching with so much interest, with so much concentration, that was out of his reach. He could never learn that game. He could never play that game just like those rich men were playing in that area. This morning, Saheb is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Saheb is no longer his own master. Now, Saheb, one morning, uh, our author encounters Saheb on his way to a milk booth. He has a canister in his hand, a steel canister, and he's going to get milk. Now, he explains to her that he started working at a tea stall down the road and he's paid 800 rupees and all his meals. So, he gets to eat at that tea stall and he gets 800 rupees as salary per month. Now, our author asks him if he likes the job, but on his face, she could see that all the carefree look of this little child was gone. Now it was replaced by responsibilities of earning. That little child who was so carefree when he was picking garbage, when he was rag picking, he was looking for gold in the garbage. That look was gone. Now he was a responsible person who was a person who was responsible for earning for his family, and he was earning 800 rupees at that time. Now his steel canister was so heavy. Here, steel canister can be seen as a symbolism, as a symbol for the weight of responsibilities that he has to carry. It was so heavier, it was heavier than the plastic bag that he used to carry so lightly over his shoulder. The time that he was so carefree, that he was free from all the responsibilities, was now gone. Now he had to fulfill the responsibilities of his family. He was not his own master anymore. He was not that young child who could run away with his friends with holes in shoes or maybe mismatched shoes or even barefoot. He was not that little child anymore. To get out of poverty, to earn even a little bit for their meals, to earn 2 or 3 meals or even one meal a day, he now had to lose his freedom and work for somebody else, work for this person who owned the tea shop. With this, we finish the first part of this chapter. Now we will move to the second part of this chapter, which is the story of Mukesh, the bangle maker, the child who belongs to the bangle making family, and how poverty has done to their family is what we are going to look in the next part of the story. I want to drive a car. This story is of Mukesh, who wants to be his own master, who wants to be a motor mechanic, who wants to do something that is different from what his family does, which is bangle making. Mukesh insists on being his own master. I will be a motor mechanic, he announces. Do you know anything about cars? I ask. I again is our author. Alright. I will learn to drive a car, he answers, looking straight into my eyes. His dream looms like a mirage amidst the dust of the streets that fill his town, Firozabad, famous for its bangles. Every other family in Firozabad is engaged in making bangles. It is the center of India's glass-blowing industry where families have spent generations working around furnaces, welding glass, making bangles for all the women in the land, it seems. Now, this story is about Mukesh, who wants to be his own master. He wants to be a motor mechanic. He does not want to be a part of this bangle making industry. So, in this conversation, now the author asks him if he knew anything about cars, to which he responds that he will learn to drive a car, and he says it when by he says it so confidently, looking straight into the author's eyes. His dream, it looms, it you can say it's there in his eyes, but it's like a mirage. It's like a hope that cannot be fulfilled, it cannot be achieved. Just like the dust that you can see on the streets of Firozabad, of his own town, that is famous for its bangles. Every other family in Firozabad is engaged in making bangles. Firozabad is the center of India's glassblowing industry, and families here, every family, every household in this place is engaged in making bangles for the entire country, for the women of the entire country. So these people, they have made bangles, they have welded glasses, they have made bangles, they have worked around furnaces for ages, for generations. Mukesh is a part of such a generation. However, he dreams to do something other than that. He dreams of a whole other career, of a whole other future, which seems impossible. Mukesh's family is among them. None of them know that it is illegal for children like him to work in glass furnaces with high temperatures, in dingy cells without air and light. That the law, if enforced, could get him and all those 20,000 children out of hot furnaces where they slog their daylight hours, often losing the brightness of their eyes. Mukesh's eyes beam as he volunteers to take me home, which he proudly says is being rebuilt. We walk down stinking lanes, choked with garbage, past homes that remain hovels with crumbling walls, wobbly doors, no windows, crowded with families of humans and animals coexisting in a primeval state. He stops at the door of one such house, bangs a wobbly iron door with his foot and pushes it open. We enter a half built shack. In one part of it, thatched with dead grass, is a firewood stove over which sits a large vessel of sizzling spinach leaves. On the ground, in large aluminium platters, are more chopped vegetables. A frail young woman is cooking the evening meal for the whole family. Now, when our author encounters Mukesh and talks to him, she realizes that children working in such bad situation, in such horrible situation, is against the law. It is our law that young children cannot work in places that are uh, that are dangerous for them. And working in glass furnaces, it is a place with high temperature, and in a room without light or even air. If the law was enforced, these 20,000 children and Mukesh would be made to stop working in these hot furnaces if the law was enforced properly, where they work throughout the day in such darkness, and which results in them losing their eyesight because they have to work for so long hours for their entire day in that place without air, without light, in such high temperature. And they have to work in hot furnaces, they have to melt glass, and they have to make bangles out of them. Right now, Mukesh's eyes they beam as he volunteers to take her home, as he agrees to take her home, which he proudly says that is being rebuilt. They are rebuilding his home. Now, when the author and Mukesh walk towards their home, they walk down stinking lanes that were choked with garbage. So here we can see how in what kind of areas they live, in such poverty-stricken areas they live, where to get to their homes, they have to pass through lanes that are filled with garbage, that stink, that are smelling, and they have to pass homes that remain hovels, that are not fit to live because they are very dirty and they're crumbling, they're about to fall off. They have wobbly doors, doors that are not even strong, unsteady doors, no windows, and crowded with families of humans and animals all coexisting, all living in the same place, in such primeval state as early people used to do. Now he stops at the door of one similar house and bangs the wobbly door, bangs his door, which is about to fall off, wobbly iron door, with his foot and pushes it open. There she enters a half built shack. It's a kind of a house, not a proper house, but and it is half built. In one part of it, it is thatched with dead grass. It is filled with dead grass, and there is a firewood stove over there, on which there is a large vessel in which spinach is being cooked. And on the ground, in large aluminium platters, in large plates of aluminium, there are more vegetables that have been chopped for the dinner of that day. There is a frail young woman, there's a weak, unhealthy young woman who's cooking the evening meal for the whole family. Through eyes filled with smoke, she smiles. She is the wife of Mukesh's elder brother. Not much older in years, she has begun to command respect as the Bahu, the daughter-in-law of the house, already in charge of three men: her husband, Mukesh, and their father. When the older man enters, she gently withdraws behind the broken wall and brings her veil close to her face. As custom demands, daughters in law must veil their faces before male elders. In this case, the elder is an impoverished bangle maker. Despite long years of hard labor, first as a tailor, then a bangle maker, he has failed to renovate a house, send his two sons to school. All he has managed to do is teach them what he knows: the art of making bangles. Now, since she's cooking on a firewood stove, her eyes are filled with smoke that is coming out of the firewood that is burning. Through that, she smiles at the author. She is introduced as the wife of Mukesh's elder brother, who is not much older than Mukesh. So the girl is also a very young girl, but even at that age, even at that young tender age, she is known as the Bahu of that household. She is the daughter-in-law of the household, and she is already in charge of three men, that are her husband Mukesh and their father. She has to take care of their meals, of their clothes, washing their clothes, keeping the house clean, and so on and so forth. She is the only woman in that household, and she is responsible, even though she is not much older than Mukesh. Or maybe she could even be of the same age as Mukesh, because the elder brother is not much older. So even at that young age, she has to undertake the responsibility of feeding three people along with herself and taking care of their needs. Now, when their father enters, that is her father-in-law enters, she gently, very quietly goes behind the broken wall, because she's not supposed to be seen, and covers her face with her dupatta, with her veil, because that is their custom, because that is what they have to do. They have to veil their faces, they have to hide their faces in front of male elders. Now, in this case, this elder is an impoverished, is someone who is very who's very poor, who's very thin and poor bangle maker. Now, even though he has worked hard for a long, long years, for his entire life he has worked. First, he started working as a tailor, and then he had to switch back to being a bangle maker. He has failed to renovate his house. He has failed to improve his house or even send his two sons to school. All he has managed to do, all he has been able to do through his labor throughout his life, is to teach them what he knows. And what he knows is the art of making bangles. That is all he could do throughout his life, because that was all that he could do. That was all that he had learnt, and that was all his previous generations have learnt and have stuck with. It is his karam, his destiny, says Mukesh's grandmother, who has watched her own husband go blind with the dust from polishing the glass of bangles. Can a God given lineage ever be broken? She implies. Born in the caste of bangle makers, they have seen nothing but bangles. In the house, in the yard, in every other house, every other yard, every street in Firozabad. Spirals of bangles, sunny gold, paddy green, royal blue, pink, purple, every color born out of the seven colors of the rainbow, lie in mounds, in unkept yards, are piled in four-wheeled handcarts, pushed by young men along the narrow lanes of the shanty town. And in dark hutments, next to lines of flames of flickering oil lamps, sit boys and girls with their fathers and mothers, welding pieces of colored glass into circles of bangles. Their eyes are more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside. That is why they often end up losing their eyesight before they become adults. Now, we also meet another family member, which is the grandmother of Mukesh, who has watched her own husband, that is Mukesh's father's father, go blind. And all she can say um, for this is that it is his karam, it is his destiny. And it is everybody's destiny that whoever has been born into that family, it's their destiny to be born into such a family of bangle makers, of this caste of bangle makers. And she implies, she says that, can someone ever run away from something that God has given, from a lineage, from a series of family that has been given to them by God? Can that ever be broken? Can the tradition being followed from generations ever be broken? A God given tradition? No. According to them, it cannot. And in that perpetual state of poverty, in that vicious cycle of poverty, they cannot get out of it. They cannot get out of that web of poverty. Now, this is not only the state of their family, it is the state of every single family on every single street in Firozabad. In every yard, you will see, if you visit Firozabad, in every yard, in every household, you will see that there are spirals of bangles of different colors, of as many colors as can be made out of the seven colors of the rainbow. They lie in heaps, they lie in large amount in every yard, which are not even well cared for. Then they are piled on four-wheeled handcarts, and they are pushed around by young men to sell them in the narrow lanes of the shanty town. And in dark, all the little children, they sit with their fathers and mothers, welding pieces, using the colored glass, making the hot glass into circles of bangles. They are more comfortable in the darkness because they have to sit in those dark holes or dark places with the furnace all day long to make bangles, which is why they are more adjusted to the dark. They're not adjusted to the light. And this is why they have to end up losing their eyesight even before they become adults. This is the story of every bangle maker in the city in the town of Firozabad. Savita, a young girl in a drab pink dress, sits alongside an elderly woman, soldering pieces of glass. As her hands move mechanically like the tongs of a machine, I wonder if she knows the sanctity of the bangles she helps make. It symbolizes an Indian woman's suhag, auspiciousness in marriage. It will dawn on her suddenly, one day, when her head is draped with a red veil, her hands dyed red with henna, and red bangles rolled onto her wrists. She will then become a bride, like the old woman beside her, who became one many years ago. She still has bangles on her wrist, but no light in her eyes. एक वक्त शेर भर खाना भी नहीं खाया, she says, in a voice trained of joy. She has not even she's not enjoyed even one full meal in her entire lifetime. That's what she has reaped. Her husband, an old man with a flowing beard, says, I know nothing except bangles. All I've done is make a house for the family to live in. Now, this is the story of another family of a girl named Savita who is wearing a very old, very a pink colored dress, but it is a faded dress. It's a very old dress, very unattractive, and she sits alongside an elderly woman, probably her grandmother, and you can see that the way she's soldering pieces of glasses, the way she's melting pieces of glasses and making bangles out of them, her hands move as if they know what they're doing without even her looking at it. So this shows that she's been doing this work for so long that she does not even have to pay attention to it anymore. She is working like a machine. However, she's so small, she's so young that she does not even know the sanctity, this holiness of these bangles, the importance of these bangles. She does not know that these bangles that she is helping her grandmother make, they are a symbol of the auspiciousness in marriage, of the holiness in marriage, and of the Indian woman's suhag, of the husbands. Okay. One day, however, author realizes that she will come to understand, she will come to realize that what she had been doing for since her childhood, she will realize it when her head is draped with a red veil and her hands are dyed red with henna, and she has to wear those red bangles. She will then become a bride. She will then realize the value of the bangles that she's making. She does not know the value of the bangles she's making right now. It will be when once she gets married, once she becomes a bride, that she will get to know how valuable the work she's doing is. Like this old woman who was sitting beside her, who became a bride many years ago. She still wears bangles, but she does not have light in her eyes. She's gone blind. She tells our author that she's not enjoyed one full meal in her entire lifetime. That is what she has gained from making bangles, for losing her eyesight by making bangles for other people, for making such valuable things. She's not even got a full meal in her entire lifetime. And her husband, who is an old man with a flowing beard, he says that he does not know anything except make how to make bangles, and all he has been able to do through making bangles is to make a house for the family to live in. That is all he has been able to do. So even though they're doing such a hard work, even though they're sacrificing their lives just to make other women look beautiful, just to make other women be able to wear bangles. That is such an auspicious thing, as a part of Hindu, uh, you can say. And even other women from all kinds of backgrounds are wearing bangles. It is such an auspicious thing, but they are so undervalued. The creators of such auspicious things are so undervalued. They are not even given. They are not even able to afford a proper meal in their lifetime. Moreover, they end up losing their lives, their eyesights, their childhood, to create such bangles, to create such auspicious things. So this is such a sad irony that the creator of such auspicious objects are so undervalued, that they're stuck in poverty, that they cannot come out of their perpetual state, their sad state, and they have to sacrifice so much. Hearing him, one wonders if he has achieved what many have failed in their lifetime. He has a roof over his head. The cry of not having money to do anything except carry on the business of making bangles, not even enough to eat, rings in every home. The young men echo the lament of their elders. Little has moved with time, it seems, in Firozabad. Years of mind numbing toil have killed all initiative and the ability to dream. I hope the story so far is clear to you all. And if you have any queries, please feel free to ask in the comments. These stories are these stories will make you feel. They will make you understand. They will make you uh, want to do something for these people. These stories are so, they're going to touch the heart of everyone who reads them, because they unveil the plight, the pain the people have to go through just to make other people's lives better. They cannot make their own lives better, but they are making lives of other people better. Now, hearing this little thing, that all he has been able to do from his earning of his lifetime is to be able to build a house for his family, one can wonder whether this husband of whether Savita's grandfather probably has achieved what a lot of people have failed in their lifetime. Now he has a roof over his head. And however, the cry of not having enough money, the pain of not having enough money to do anything except to continue making bangles, it is the truth of every house in Firozabad, that they do not have enough money to even eat, even though they are making such auspicious things for the entire, for so many women in the entire country, for all the women in the land. The young men are forced to undergo the troubles, the pains that the elders have gone through, because they cannot earn enough to come out of this poverty stricken state. Very little has changed with time, it seems, in Firozabad. And years of this mind numbing, of this tiring, exhausting hard work has killed all their initiative. Even if they wanted to try to do something else, all that is now dead, because they cannot earn enough, they cannot step out, they cannot dream. They have lost their ability to dream, to take any initiative, to try to come out of their of this mind numbing toil, of this hard work. They cannot come out of this situation. Why not organize yourselves into a cooperative? I ask a group of young men who have fallen into the vicious cycle of middlemen who trapped their fathers and forefathers. Even if we get organized, we are the ones who will be hauled up by the police, beaten, and dragged to jail for doing something illegal. They say there is no leader among them, no one who could help them see things differently. Their fathers are as tired as they are. They talk endlessly in a spiral that moves from poverty to apathy to greed and to injustice. Now, our author suggests them to, she questions them as to why they haven't become a cooperative like other business people, why they haven't become an organization and tried to improve their situation. To which this group of young men replies that um, even if they did, even if they tried, they have been trapped by middlemen. Their fathers, their forefathers have been trapped by middlemen who will not let them get organized and who will not let them get their rights. Because, see, middlemen are people who are going to procure the bangles in very less amount. Hence, they earn nothing. And then they're going to sell it to other people like us, women like us, women who are getting married, women, children, girls who like to wear bangles, and women of all sorts. They're going to sell those in higher prices. So they will not want to incur any loss, because this has been going on. This way of business has been going on since generations. So they've trapped their, so these middlemen have trapped these bangle makers fathers, their forefathers, for generations. And even if they try to get organized, these middlemen will force, they will they will force them to give it up by making them uh, falsely accusing them for something, and then making them get dragged to jail, get beaten, and get caught up, or get summoned by the police. There is no one, there is no strong leader among them who can tell them otherwise, who can give them the courage to dream, to hope, to become an organization, and to free themselves from the trap of these middlemen. So they talk in an endless spiral about that moves from poverty to apathy. Apathy is because nobody else, because they are not interested in anything, or they are not enthusiastic in anything anymore. From poverty to apathy to greed to injustice. Now, the greed is to continue earning at least whatever they are earning, okay, and to injustice, because, and also this greed is related to the greed of the middlemen, because they can, their business continues to flourish, but these people, they do not get their fair earning, which is the injustice to them. So they are stuck in this vicious cycle, in this never ending dangerous cycle of poverty. From poverty to apathy, people do not take care of them. Even the policemen are not worried if they are being ill treated. Then this cycle goes on, the spiral goes on to greed and then to injustice. Listening to them, I see two distinct worlds. One of the family caught in a web of poverty, burdened by stigma of caste in which they are born. The other, a vicious cycles of sahukars, the middlemen, the policemen, the keepers of law, the bureaucrats, and the politicians. Now, this in this paragraph, she is also in these lines. Anees Jung is reflecting on the two distinct worlds that she has seen. First is of the family of Saheb, who has been caught in the web of poverty, because they were born in the caste of rag pickers, and they are burdened by that stigma, by that unfair feeling that other people have against rag pickers and people living in slums, which has led them to survive, to look for gold in garbage for their survival, and barely get anything to survive, to eat, to wear, to live. And then there is another world of a vicious cycle, the other family that has been caught in this vicious, in this dangerous, in this cruel cycle of sahukars, of middlemen, of policemen, of keepers of law, bureaucrats, and politicians, that have been trapped for generations into this bangle making. They have been burdened by this profession of bangle making, which forces them to sacrifice even their eyesights, their childhood, their lives. Together, they have imposed the baggage on the child that he cannot put down. Now, together, all these people have imposed the baggage, the burden has come down on the children. They cannot put this down because they have to carry it forward. The elders get tired, they get blind, they get sick, they may die. And then all this burden comes on to the children. Before he is aware, he accepts it as naturally as his father. Before even they understand that they are being handed over a baggage, they are being handed over a burden, they accept it naturally as their fate, as something they have to do, just as their fathers and their forefathers and their forefathers have done. To do anything else would mean to dare, and daring is not a part of his growing up. So if they want to do anything else, if they want to change their fate, they would have to dream. And dreaming would mean they would have to dare to do something other than what they have been doing. And for that, they would need a lot of resources which they cannot even think of getting. For example, education, which is the basic right of every person. A fair square meal twice or thrice a day, at least 2 times a day. A fair share of their earning. These are all the things that are basic rights. A proper place to live, a clean place to live. All these things are basic rights that they desire, that they need. But it is a far-fetched dream for them. And if they even if they want to change the place that they live in and the situations that they live in, all these resources are not provided to them. Their basic rights have been taken away. And hence, daring is not a part of their growing up. They have to silently accept the fate as it is given to them, as it comes to them, just like their fathers and generations in their family. When I sense a flash of it in Mukesh, I am cheered. I want to be a motor mechanic, he repeats. He will go to a garage and learn. But the garage is a long way from his home. I will walk, he insists. Do you also dream of flying a plane? He is suddenly silent. No, he says, staring at the ground. In a small murmur, there is an embarrassment that has not yet turned into regret. He is content to dream of cars that he sees hurtling down the streets of his town. Few airplanes fly over Firozabad. Now, we have come to the end of this chapter where we finally understand that this conversation between Mukesh was also a flashback, kind of, the story was also written in a flashback. Okay, and then she comes back to the present where she asks, when he repeats himself that he wants to become a motor mechanic, and there she sees a flash of daring in Mukesh's eyes, in eyes that are still gleaming, because he is still a little child who's just started making bangles, so his eyesight is still fine. So he has to go to a garage to learn, but that garage is very long away from his home, both physically and metaphorically, because he says that he will walk. So that is physically, that tells us that the garage is the garage could be a place very far away from his home. Metaphorically, this line explains that him being able to go to a garage, him being able to leave the shackles of poverty and the shackles that has been put on him, because he is a part of the bangle making generation, of the bangle making families. This dream of his is a far-fetched dream, is a dream that he will have to go a long way, will have to work very hard to achieve. Yet, he still has hope. He still has the courage. She also asks him if he wants to fly a plane. Now he's suddenly silent because he has not seen as many planes fly over Firozabad as he has seen the cars going around, speeding around in the streets of Firozabad. So that he stares at the ground, he's in his small murmur, in this voice of him wanting to become a motor mechanic, this there is, and him not dreaming of flying a plane, there is little embarrassment that he's not dreamt that far, but it is not turned into regret yet. He is happy to dream of cars that he sees moving with great speed and force in his area, in his town, in the streets of his town. He does not really want to fly aeroplanes, but he does want to get out of his situation, his poverty. This brings us to the end of our chapter. The two beautiful stories of two very hard-working little children who have lost their childhood, symbolized by the title, which is Lost Spring. We will now discuss the various literary aspects of this story. Before that, let's do a quick recap. The first one is that there are two narratives that portray of impoverished children losing their childhood, which is symbolized as spring. First one is Saheb, who is a rag picker in Seemapuri, Delhi, originally from Dhaka. He dreams of going to school and playing tennis. However, he has to join a tea stall and lose all his independence. Second is the story of Mukesh, a boy from Firozabad, Uttar Pradesh, born into a family of bangle makers. They live in poverty and tradition bound exploitation. They are exploited so much. He, however, dares to dream of becoming a motor mechanic. So these are the two different stories of two different children who have lost their childhood, their spring, because they were born into poor families, into families that were bound by tradition, bound in exploitation by tradition. One still has dreams, one still has the courage to dream, while the other in the end loses all his independence because the responsibility of his family has now fallen on his shoulder. Themes of this story entail poverty and child labor, cycle of poverty, dreams versus reality, tradition versus aspiration, social injustice and exploitation, and loss of childhood, which is lost spring. So we see that poverty, both the children are very poor, and both the children, because of poverty, have to fall prey to child labor. Okay. Then we see cycle of poverty, that once they are born into this family, the cycle of poverty continues, that they have been poor for generations, and there is nothing they can do. Neither of the families, neither of the communities can do anything, nor the bangle making community, nor the uh, rag picking community can do anything to come out of this vicious cycle of poverty. Then we see dreams, like dreams of Saheb to go to a school to learn tennis, and dreams of Mukesh to become a motor mechanic, versus their reality, that they have to be stuck, they have to take over the responsibilities of the family, and they have to give up their independence in case of Saheb, and probably more than independence in case of Mukesh, such as his eyesight. Tradition versus aspiration. Tradition being that as rag pickers, they have to continue picking rag, they have to continue scrounging for gold and garbage, and as bangle makers, for generations they have been stuck in such in this industry, versus their aspiration. Sahib's aspiration to become to go to school, to get an education and do something else, maybe learn how to play tennis, and Mukesh's aspiration to become a motor mechanic. So both these themes, this comparison, this contrast between tradition and aspiration can be seen in both the stories. Then we have social justice and exploitation, social injustice and exploitation. The people are exploited just because they were born into a certain caste, they were born into a certain community. They undergo exploitation. The bangle makers are not given their fair share of earning, even though they are working so hard day and night. They're toiling their best years of their lives, their spring of their lives, and in the end, they even they lose everything. They lose their eyesight. They lose their ability to do anything else, which is also social injustice, such as even rag pickers who are very close to Delhi but so far away from it metaphorically. Finally, loss of childhood, as we can see that both little children are forced uh, to undertake child labor. They're forced into child labor, and they are forced to work at a very young age in such uh, horrible situations, in such dangerous situations. So these are the themes that have been reflected in the story, in both the stories. The tone of this story, both the stories, we are going to discuss both the stories all together because they are part of one chapter and they have a similar tone. Okay, so both these stories have sympathetic, empathetic, critical and at times even ironic tone, as I've explained to you in the different cases. Okay, then style, it is a descriptive non-fiction blend with journalistic observation. We can see a lot of conversations that have been put into these stories. So it is non-fiction, it is based on real life experiences and conversations that our author has had with different children and different communities. Use of real life dialogues and conversational tones, mixture of narrative and commentary. So this is the writing style of Anees Jung. Mood of the story, both the stories, is melancholic, which is sad, poignant with a tinge of hope. Sad with a little hope in the eyes of both the children, Saheb and Mukesh. It also reflects frustration, injustice, and occasional admiration for courage. Courage in these children, and reflection reflects this frustration that their families have and the injustice that these families have faced through generations. Literary devices, irony. Sahib, the Lord of Universe, lives in abject poverty. Okay, so Sahib Alam, this is our one big irony, that Sahib Alam, the name that means the Lord of the Universe, the person with the name actually lives in such a dismal abysmal taste, in such a, you can say, a sad state of poverty. Repetition. He is barefoot. I ask why my mother did not give me any. So you can see that I has been repeated, and there is repetition in this. Allusion. It refers to government apathy and unnamed vicious cycle. Okay, so the story alludes to how government does not take any steps towards improving these people's situation. Metaphor, the garbage is gold to them. I've explained this multiple times. Imagery, like gold colored bangles evoking both beauty and pain. So we have very vivid imagery in this entire story. Symbolism, very important. Okay, symbolism is very important. I'll make a star here. Spring symbolizes childhood, bangles symbolize tradition and entrapment. Okay, spring is the symbol for childhood, and bangles, they symbolize tradition. They also symbolize entrapment, like the people in the bangle making industry have been trapped to do this thing for generations. They are not able to get out of this, of their state, even though they are making something so valuable for other people who purchase them. All right, they are stuck in this tradition of making bangles and are trapped in this vicious cycle of poverty. So these are all the literary devices being used in this chapter. Finally, the main characters of the story, both the stories. First is Sahib Alam, whose name ironically means Lord of the Universe, but is actually a barefoot rag picker. The second protagonist of the story is Mukesh, from part 2 of the story, who aspires to break the family tradition of bangle making. Then we have author, who is also the narrator, who is sympathetic, observer and critic of social inequality that these people have to go through. Finally, we have Saheb's family, Bangle workers, politicians, middlemen that represent the larger exploitative system. Okay, we see how these family, Saheb's family, and Bangle workers have been exploited by politicians, middlemen, etc. That and these represent the larger system. The larger middlemen represent the larger exploitative system. Finally, we come to the end of this chapter, and let's quickly go through the message, the moral that this chapter is providing to us. First message that it gives us is that it calls attention to the urgent need for education, equality, and freedom from bonded labor that these children have to undergo, because they cannot get out of their poverty stricken situation unless they are treated equally and they are given the proper education that they deserve. Second, it highlights how dreams are stifled under poverty and social structures like caste system, like people following the business for generations. And the story highlights how these dreams are stifled, are destroyed under such pressures of poverty and of such social structures which force them to stay in the situation for generations, in the sad situation for generations. Finally, the last message of the story, from these stories that we can get is that yes, change is still possible, like Mukesh's courage to dream. So if these people they courage, they can dream, they can have that courage to dream, to try to change their lives. Yes, their lives can change. But for that, they will also need the help of us, of people like us and people like our author who work for such people to get education, to for such children to come out of this poverty so that they can improve the lives of the future generations. And that's a wrap, fellow explorers. If Lost Spring opened your eyes and your heart, imagine what the rest of English can do. For daily study tips, smart English hacks, MCQs, mind maps, and quiz polls, join our WhatsApp channels now. Your backstage pass to cracking the board exam and PGT English prep like a pro. Links waiting in the description. Don't let this learning spring pass you by. Until next time, keep exploring, keep expressing with the Eloquent Explorers.